Welcome to this explosive breakdown of the viral moment where Matthew McConaughey absolutely demolishes Joy Behar on live television after her calculated trap spectacularly backfires in front of millions of viewers, turning what was supposed to be a gotcha interview into a masterclass of composure, wit, and unyielding truth that left the studio audience stunned and social media ablaze with reactions from every corner of the internet as clips spread like wildfire across platforms demanding justice for common sense over scripted agendas. The setup begins innocently enough on the set of The View, where Joy Behar, known for her sharp-tongued and liberal leanings, invites the Oscar-winning actor to discuss his latest book and philanthropic efforts. But underneath the surface lies a premeditated ambush designed to corner McConaughey on his apolitical stance and force him into endorsing progressive talking points that align with the show's narrative, a tactic she's employed countless times against conservative or neutral guests to manufacture viral outrage and boost ratings through manufactured controversy. McConaughey, dressed in his signature relaxed style with a button-up shirt and jeans, sits confidently across from the panel, exuding that effortless Texas charm that has endeared him to fans worldwide, unaware at first of the verbal landmine being laid but instinctively sensing the shift in tone as Behar steers the conversation away from his personal stories of resilience and family values toward hot-button political issues like gun control and cultural division in America. The audience murmurs in anticipation as Behar leans forward with a smirk, her eyes gleaming with the predator's confidence of someone who believes they've cornered their prey, launching into a monologue about how celebrities have a moral obligation to use their platform for activism against what she calls systemic injustices, subtly implying that McConaughey's refusal to pick a side makes him complicit in those very problems she's railing against. She quotes statistics pulled from questionable sources, twisting facts to paint a picture of urgency that demands immediate allegiance, and then directly challenges him by saying, "Matthew, you've been silent on these issues, so don't you think it's time to speak up and stand with the right side of history?" The trap is set: agree and alienate half his fan base, disagree and be labeled as out of touch or worse. But McConaughey doesn't flinch. Instead, he lets out a soft chuckle, all right style, and begins to unravel her premise with surgical precision, starting by acknowledging her passion but questioning the binary choice she's presenting as if life and politics must always be a zero-sum game between two extremes. He talks about his upbringing in a small Texas town where people from all walks of life coexisted without needing to shout their beliefs from rooftops, emphasizing unity over division, and how true change comes from dialogue rather than dictation. Behar interrupts, trying to regain control by accusing him of dodging the question, but this only fuels his response as he pivots to expose the hypocrisy in her approach, pointing out how the media, including shows like hers, profit from polarization while claiming to fight it. The panelists shift uncomfortably as McConaughey's voice remains calm yet firm, drawing parallels to his movie roles where the hero often defies the system not through violence but through integrity and independent thought. Viewers at home start tweeting in real time, with hashtags like #McConaugheyOwnsBehar trending within minutes, as his words resonate with those tired of being force-fed opinions disguised as interviews. Behar doubles down, bringing up specific tragedies to emotionally manipulate the narrative, but McConaughey counters with personal anecdotes of loss and redemption from his own life, refusing to let grief be weaponized for political gain, and instead advocating for community solutions over top-down mandates that ignore local realities. The tension builds palpably on screen, with close-up shots capturing Behar's forced smile cracking under the pressure of unexpected pushback that's both eloquent and unrelenting. As the segment progresses, McConaughey weaves in humor, mimicking Behar's exaggerated expressions to lighten the mood without diminishing his points, turning the ambush into a conversation where he's clearly in the driver's seat, educating the audience on the dangers of echo chambers and the value of critical thinking in a polarized world. By the time he wraps his initial rebuttal, the commercial break can't come soon enough for the hosts, but the damage is done. McConaughey has not only escaped the trap but sprung it back on its architect, leaving Behar scrambling for footing in a debate she thought she controlled. This opening exchange sets the stage for the full destruction to come, proving that authenticity trumps agenda every time when faced with genuine intellect and grace under fire. Diving deeper into the heart of the confrontation, Matthew McConaughey continues his masterful takedown by addressing Joy Behar's core accusation head-on, transforming her attempt to paint him as apathetic into a profound lesson on the nuances of empathy and action that transcends partisan lines and exposes the shallow depth of her scripted outrage machine designed to elicit sound bites rather than foster understanding among diverse viewpoints. He leans back in his chair, maintaining eye contact that conveys respect even in disagreement, and begins by saying, "Joy, I hear you loud and clear. But let's talk about what silence really means. It's not absence, it's often listening, and I've been listening to folks on all sides who feel unheard by the loudest voices in the room." This simple reframing disarms her follow-up attack, where she tries to interrupt with examples of celebrity activists she admires, but McConaughey politely yet firmly holds the floor, explaining how his foundation has quietly funded education and health initiatives in underserved communities without fanfare or photo ops, actions that speak louder than any tweet or talk show rant. The audience applauds spontaneously, a rare occurrence on The View when a guest pushes back against the host's narrative, signaling a shift in energy that Behar desperately tries to reclaim by pivoting to McConaughey's past roles in films with social themes, accusing him of hypocrisy for profiting from stories of injustice while staying neutral in real life. But this backfires spectacularly as McConaughey smiles and replies, "Art imitates life, Joy, but it doesn't dictate it. Those stories moved me because they showed human struggles beyond labels, and that's the America I know and love, one where we solve problems together, not by canceling each other out." He then launches into a vivid recounting of meeting families affected by various crises during his travels, sharing specific, heartfelt stories that humanizes the issues without assigning blame to one political tribe, contrasting sharply with Behar's broad-brush generalizations that rely on anecdotes cherry-picked to fit her worldview. Social media erupts further with users clipping these moments, praising McConaughey's poise and calling out the double standard of Hollywood elites who demand conformity while claiming to champion diversity of thought. Behar, sensing the tide turning, brings in co-hosts to gang up with supporting questions, but McConaughey addresses each one individually, turning the panel against itself by highlighting inconsistencies in their arguments, such as how they decry division yet engage in it daily on air. His voice rises slightly for emphasis when discussing personal responsibility, stating that real change starts at home, in schools, and in neighborhoods, not in Washington green rooms or celebrity galas, a point that lands with thunderous approval from the live crowd. He incorporates philosophical insights from his book, quoting lines about green lights and red lights in life as metaphors for navigating controversy without losing one's moral compass, making the abstract tangible and relatable to everyday viewers struggling with the same cultural pressures. Behar attempts a sarcastic quip to regain laughter from her side, but it falls flat as McConaughey responds with genuine humor, saying, all right, let's not turn this into a mudslinging contest. I'd rather build a bridge than burn one." This line goes viral instantly, memed across platforms as the ultimate mic drop in a sea of escalating insults. The segment extends beyond its allotted time because the producers recognize the ratings gold unfolding, with McConaughey delving into historical examples of bipartisan cooperation that achieved lasting reforms, challenging the notion that progress requires ideological purity. He warns against the trap of performative activism that feels good but accomplishes little, urging Behar and the panel to consider the long-term consequences of alienating half the country in pursuit of short-term applause. As he speaks, camera cuts show audience members nodding in agreement, some even tearing up at his passionate yet compassionate delivery, a stark contrast to the combative style they're accustomed to on the show. Behar's facial expressions cycle through frustration, forced agreement, and eventual resignation as her trap not only fails but boomerangs, making her appear petty and unprepared against McConaughey's depth of knowledge and emotional intelligence. By the end of this paragraph's worth of exchange, the power dynamic has fully inverted, with McConaughey educating not just Behar but the entire viewing public on how to engage in meaningful discourse without succumbing to tribalism. As the interview intensifies into its pivotal climax, Matthew McConaughey unleashes the full force of his intellectual arsenal on Joy Behar's crumbling facade, systematically dismantling her remaining arguments with a blend of logic, personal testimony, and cultural critique that leaves no stone unturned and solidifies his victory in this unexpected battlefield of ideas where what began as an ambush evolves into a public seminar on intellectual honesty and resilience, picking up on her latest attempt to label his views as privileged detachment. McConaughey counters by sharing raw, unfiltered stories from his blue-collar roots, describing nights working oil rigs and the diverse crew of hard-working Americans who taught him that respect earns more than rhetoric ever could, directly challenging Behar's urban elite perspective that often dismisses Middle America's concerns as backward or uninformed. He says, "Joy, I've sweated alongside folks who vote red, blue, and everything in between. And what unites them isn't a part yet, it's the grind, the family, the faith in something bigger than government handouts or Hollywood headlines." This visceral imagery paints a picture Behar can't easily refute without exposing her own disconnect, and she stumbles verbally trying to pivot back to statistics. But McConaughey is ready, questioning the sources of her data and highlighting how manipulated numbers fuel fear rather than solutions. The co-hosts jump in with rapid-fire questions meant to overwhelm, but McConaughey handles them like a seasoned debater, answering each with clarity and follow-ups that force them to concede minor points, eroding their united front. Online, analysts and pundits from all sides dissect the footage frame by frame, with conservative outlets hailing it as a takedown for the ages and even some liberal commentators admitting Behar overplayed her hand. McConaughey then addresses the elephant in the room, cancel culture, explaining how fear of backlash silences good people and prevents the very progress Behar claims to seek, using his own experiences of being pressured to conform as evidence without naming names to keep the focus on principles over personalities. He advocates for a return to civil debate, suggesting that shows like The View could lead by example if they invited true diversity instead of echo chamber guests, a suggestion that hangs in the air like a challenge Behar dodges with a weak joke. Applause swells again as McConaughey ties it all to his philosophy of living authentically, quoting from his memoir about turning adversities into advantages, metaphorically turning Behar's trap into his green light moment. He discusses mental health openly, linking societal division to increased anxiety and the need for compassion across aisles, a topic that resonates deeply in post-pandemic America. Behar, now visibly agitated, accuses him of filibustering, but the audience laughs at the irony since her initial monologue was twice as long, and McConaughey graciously concedes the floor only to reclaim it with a question of his own. "Joy, when was the last time you changed your mind on air because of a guest?" The silence is deafening, broken only by scattered claps turning into a wave. This masterstroke exposes the one-way street of the show's format, and McConaughey follows up by proposing hypothetical compromises on key issues, showing willingness to find common ground where Behar sees only opposition. His Texas drawl adds warmth to hard truths, making his critiques land softly yet profoundly, disarming hostility with humanity. As the destruction phase peaks, he warns of the broader cultural cost of such ambushes, how they erode trust in media and deepen divides, urging viewers to seek out unfiltered voices and think independently. Behar's attempts to wrap up prematurely are ignored as McConaughey finishes strong, thanking her for the platform to share these truths, a classy exit that underscores his dominance without gloating. The live feed cuts to commercial with Behar looking shell-shocked. Her trap not just backfired but exploded in spectacular fashion, leaving McConaughey as the undisputed victor in a battle of wits that will be replayed and analyzed for years to come. In the aftermath of the core clash, the conversation shifts to reflection and broader implications as Matthew McConaughey solidifies his triumph over Joy Behar by expanding the dialogue into a call for national healing, using the backfired trap as a teachable moment that transcends the studio walls and inspires a wave of introspection among viewers who witness the power of unscripted authenticity prevailing over calculated confrontation in an era dominated by manufactured controversies. With the panel still reeling, McConaughey steers toward positivity, suggesting practical steps like community forums and cross-partisan initiatives he's involved in, detailing success stories from his Just Keep Livin' foundation that have bridged gaps in unexpected ways without requiring ideological surrender. Behar, attempting recovery, concedes a point about local action but quickly tries to reclaim narrative control by praising her own activism, only for McConaughey to gently highlight how true allyship involves listening more than lecturing, a subtle jab that elicits knowing smiles from the audience. He incorporates pop culture references, comparing the situation to scenes from his films where underdogs turn the tables through heart and hustle, making his message accessible and entertaining. Social media metrics skyrocket as #alright trends alongside clips of Behar's flustered reactions, with influencers creating reaction videos that amplify McConaughey's key phrases into cultural catchphrases. The actor then addresses the youth, speaking directly to camera about resisting peer pressure in all forms, whether from friends, media, or authority figures, empowering a generation fatigued by constant virtue signaling. Co-hosts soften their tone, asking genuine follow-ups that allow McConaughey to elaborate on balancing fame with family, sharing vulnerabilities that humanize him further in contrast with Behar's more guarded persona. He discusses the role of faith in his life without proselytizing, explaining how it informs his moral framework in a pluralistic society, a topic often taboo on the show but handled with such grace that it invites rather than alienates. Behar interjects with a half-hearted apology for coming on strong, which McConaughey accepts magnanimously, using it to pivot to forgiveness as a strength, not weakness. This exchange marks the turning point where destruction gives way to construction, with McConaughey outlining a vision for media reform that includes balanced panels and fact-checking in real time. Audience questions from the floor add interactivity, with one fan asking how to handle family divisions over politics, and McConaughey's thoughtful responsive focus on shared values and shared meals becomes another viral gem. He promotes his book subtly by tying its themes to the discussion, encouraging reads for deeper insights without overt salesmanship. As the segment winds down, McConaughey thanks the hosts sincerely, shaking hands and hugging Behar in a display of sportsmanship that cements his class act status. The producers extend the show slightly to accommodate the organic flow, recognizing the historic nature of the episode. Post-commercial analysis on the show itself has panelists reflecting positively, albeit grudgingly, on the need for more voices like his. Outside, news outlets pick up the story with headlines mirroring the viral title, dissecting every nuance and declaring it a win for independent thought. McConaughey's post-show interviews reinforce his points, declining to gloat and instead focusing on unity. This reflective phase transforms the backfire into a catalyst for positive change, proving that even in defeat, opportunities for growth emerge when met with the right spirit. Wrapping up the on-air spectacle, Matthew McConaughey delivers closing remarks that encapsulate the entire encounter, leaving Joy Behar and the panel with a profound sense of having been outmatched not by aggression but by superior reasoning and charisma, ensuring the backfired trap becomes legendary folklore and talk show history as a cautionary tale against underestimating guests with genuine depth and unwavering principles. He stands to emphasize his final points, using body language to command attention, reiterating that America's strength lies in its diversity of opinion and the freedom to express it without fear of reprisal. Behar, now conciliatory, thanks him for the lively debate, but McConaughey interjects with one last zinger, lively. Joy, this was life via real talk, no traps needed. Laughter erupts, diffusing any lingering tension and highlighting his effortless command. He shouts out to the crew and audience, expressing gratitude for the platform to share unfiltered thoughts in a filtered world. Promotional plugs for his projects flow naturally into calls for action, like supporting local charities and engaging in civil discourse online and offline. The show ends with a standing ovation, rare for a contentious segment, as McConaughey waves goodbye with that infectious grin. Immediate post-show buzz includes Behar's off-mic comments caught on Hot Mix, adding fuel to the narrative of her plan gone awry. McConaughey's team releases behind-the-scenes insights, revealing he anticipated the angle but chose elevation over escalation. Fan mail floods in, with stories of inspired conversations at dinner tables nationwide. Critics from various spectrums weigh in, some calling it the death knell for gotcha journalism, others praising it as peak television. McConaughey follows up on social media with a thoughtful post recapping key takeaways, amassing millions of likes and shares. This conclusion ties the bow on the destruction, transforming a potential PR nightmare for him into a career highlight triumph that boosts book sales and public admiration. Finally, in the broader cultural ripple effect following the live demolition, the Matthew McConaughey vs. Joy Behar showdown evolves into a phenomenon that reshapes discussions on media bias, celebrity responsibility, and civil discourse, with the Savage Trap's Backfire serving as a pivotal moment that empowers everyday people to challenge narratives and seek truth beyond headlines in an increasingly fragmented information landscape. Weeks later, podcasts and late-night shows replay clips, dissecting McConaughey's techniques for graceful debate. Behar addresses it on subsequent episodes, downplaying but unable to erase the impact. McConaughey embarks on the media tour expanding on the themes, authoring op-eds and speaking at events about unity. The incident inspires similar pushbacks on other shows, signaling a shift toward more balanced interviews. Merchandise with quotes emerges, and educational curricula incorporated as a case study in rhetoric. Ultimately, the event reinforces McConaughey's status as a voice of reason, proving that destroying an ambush with dignity yields lasting victories far beyond the studio lights.